Communication Untangled with Sue Keogh. Untangling Captions.
Have you noticed how captions have become more commonplace nowadays? Influencers add text to their TikToks so you can understand their content. Or maybe you've been in a Teams meeting and there's been live captions as it's gone along. My guest in this episode is Hector Minto, and he's the Lead Accessibility Evangelist at Microsoft. He spent his career focusing on accessibility, assistive technology and disability issues. The day we met, he was giving a talk on digital inclusion at a Lloyds Bank event, so we ducked into a side room where he told me about how AI is transforming the ability to create fast, accurate captions and the difference this is making so people don't get left behind in an ever more digital society. You also share some brilliant tips on writing alt text and ways to make your content more accessible and inclusive. Along the way, we take a trip to the Tate and look at how they write their artwork descriptions and how even the font itself helps break down barriers and makes everybody feel welcome in the gallery. But first, let's kick off by getting Hector to explain what we mean by the term captions.
So a caption is something that should be ever present in video content, and it gives you essentially what people are saying on screen, but in text format at the bottom of the screen.
And do you think our expectations have changed around captions as well? Because thinking about work that we've done in the past, you're so worried that there might be some sort of typo, whereas now the expectations have changed and you kind of understand that the technology is happening at lightning speed.
Great point. Right, so if you're after absolute accuracy on a TV programme with context, you're going to be using AI to probably get your first brief done, your first draft done, and then you're going to be really making sure it's accurate because that's your product. But if it's your social media post, if it's just, it's just an informal video, people are very good at understanding, the translation of the auto caption, and the mistakes are far fewer than they used to be. So I definitely think the world is changing, not just in terms of people's production values. Depends, is it a quick bit of social versus a, fully formalized, heavily produced video? And then there's also the expectation of people who need the captions are changing. So it used to be, we must have accuracy at all cost. And now it's, we must have flexibility. And I think that's really fascinating. So as the accuracy pivots towards more accurate with the AI, what we're then starting to see is greater flexibility for people who are deaf, hard of hearing and need them, or people who are autistic, or people who have English as a second language. But there's this lovely development of the understanding. That's taken some humility from communities. If we talk about the deaf community, when things were not good, there was very much, we must not use auto captioning. And now as the flexibility in the workplace has started to come, as the flexibility within social settings has started to come, as new technology options like smart glasses and things are talking about having live captions right in the moment, and the accuracy has reached a level where we can start to trust it a lot more, the relationship's changing.
So can you tell me a bit more about the work that you've done at Microsoft in this area, particularly around, say, live captions in Teams calls? So that must be so much more inclusive for people with different sort of access needs when they're following a call online.
Yeah, absolutely. So first things, they're there, 3 dots, speech and language, turn on live captions. Go turn them on. They don't cost anything, turn them on. Turn them on in your meetings. And what you will find, anyone who's listening to this now, is you've just got this nice scrollable transcript in the meeting that you can just go up and down and check what people are saying. And it just acts as a really nice add-on to a meeting. I have mine on all the time. It's taking its accuracy from your environment, and that adds to the accuracy all the time. So it's a really nice inclusive experience. But still, there are some people who will say, I must have a human captioner. So we call that CART in the US, it's kind of US driven. So you also have the option to have a third party join you on a Teams call and be your human captioner.
Oh, right, okay.
So regardless of how far the AI goes, there will be certain circumstances like a legal meeting, public meeting minutes, where organisations have a policy that you must have a human stenographer within the Teams call.
And is that because people are worried where this content is being used, that it could be absorbed into the AI somehow, and that kind of consent and confidentiality issue?
So we don't. Your data is your data. Microsoft does. We train our models in lots of different ways. Okay, for the standard word bank. For your meeting, you use your text and your data in your environment, and that adds to the accuracy. Your information stays your side. We don't see it. That wasn't really the driver for the human captioning. The human captioning was much more the deaf community saying to us, there are times where the AI just doesn't work. So events would be one where they were more worried about it. Remember, pure, proper live captions, has people's names next to them as well. And if you've got an event and you've got 6 people on a panel, how does the AI know who's speaking? Well, now we're working on ways to train that, okay? So that is coming. People will start to see that. But normally, for an event, people will want to know that John interrupted James and have that names. And then also things like applause. They want to know that people are applauding or people are laughing. A really highly qualified professional stenographer will add all that rich value to an event. This is what I said earlier. It's the balance between the flexibility and in the moment and what's the experience that I'm trying to have here.
That's really interesting as well that you touch upon various challenges. So can I ask you about a couple of challenges? First of all, accents. So I saw you talking the other day about live captions in Parliament. So British Parliament, you've got people from Yorkshire, people from Cornwall, people from Bristol. Then is that a challenge for live captions? Is it getting better?
It's definitely getting better. I mean, I can tell you now. I mean, I've been fortunate that I've been at it from the start. You know, I mean, I'm like the earliest of early adopters on all these things when they first come out, and I'm the brave one that just turns them on and says, "We're using them anyway. Come on, let's go." And we did have lots of. I remember the one that really got to me was a very senior leader at Microsoft has an incredibly strong French accent, and the AI just didn't have a chance. But now I looked at stuff that he was speaking about recently. It's fantastic. You know, we are training the models all the time. Interestingly, just to share that example, the data for French spoken English is lower than for Hindi, Indian spoken English. The accuracy of somebody who's the native Indian accent speaking English was incredibly accurate even from day one. Yeah, because the data that it's built on is what's driving the accuracy of the experience. This is also why when I always say to people, and I always joke with very senior execs turning captions on, they kind of get nervous quite often, and they start talking like this, as if this is how the AI expects you to talk. And I'm always like, speed up. The AI is trained on normal human speech. It's more accurate if you speak in the way that you actually speak. That's what drives the accuracy, not this giving the AI time to understand the words. That doesn't work. You'll get worse results when you do that.
How do you counteract the issue that, so US dialects, for example, and accents, they're going to be so much more, not dominant, but this is what so much of the data is trained on, as opposed to Shetland Islands?
It's hard for us because it's like, what's our responsibility and what's just going to happen? So I know that there are sort of various projects I've looked at where they're actively doing that data recording. We have projects going on inside Microsoft around actually just saving specific languages like dying languages that are going, and doing specific data training on those, making sure we've got the corpus of data to save that language, even for text translation. That work is ongoing. And I just see this as being kind of very much the same thing. Wouldn't it be a horrific world if we couldn't hear that beautiful Shetland accent,
exactly.
Right, of course, right? And everyone felt they had to lose that to get, to be able to use modern tools, voice activation and things. 100% no. We should be supporting those projects to make sure that we retain all of that. But it is fair to say that small data sets drive inferior experiences. That's how the systems work.
And how do you convince people that this is important? So the thing about tech is it moves on at such pace, there's such momentum and everyone's so excited about AI. So do you find yourself sometimes saying, hang on a sec, don't forget about the accessibility side?
Yes, every day. That's like literally my job.
That's your job.
You've just defined my job. What I can tell you is we've been delighted. I mean, I'm 8 years into Microsoft now. When we first started this project, it was, do people care about this at all? Was honestly where we were at. And I was meeting people with disabilities in the workplace who were sitting in front of their manager saying things to them like, I've never been able to read an accessible document in this workplace. There were some tough conversations we had with organisations, including our own, just to be blunt, like every organisation's on a journey on this. What I would say is happening, it's disability-led awareness. That's what drives it. The more that we work on representation of people with disabilities in all aspects, as customers, as colleagues, as friends, there's a proximity argument is how I define it. The closer you are to people with disabilities and the technology they use, the more energy you get behind this. The trick is for those large organisations in society to start driving the requirement for the proximity. So we've got to hire more people with disabilities, government needs to design for disability in its services. We've got to make sure that we're supporting disabled people's organisations to be the champions for an accessible banking experience or an accessible theatre experience, but talking from a position of knowledge. And that's really where a lot of what I do is, what we're driving is knowledge, is taking the training. If you don't know how to put captions on a video nowadays, then learn. It's like every 14-year-old manages to do it on TikTok, and yet we say that we can't make our course accessible in the workplace. That's ludicrous. Yeah.
I think it's interesting the different drivers. So the 14-year-old on TikTok is thinking, I want more people to see my video. I want more people to be able to understand it and share it.
Yeah, they are though. Yeah, I've got a theory on this. I think it's just modelling. And it's been interesting. I've been watching some of the response from people, the deaf community, people who've had formal captions for some time, and they see this design of caption, that's kind of jumping out of the screen as part of the experience, and they're kind of, they're a bit bristled by it. Some people, they don't like it because it's like, no, don't mess with our captions. Captions are illegal. Entitlement. And the younger generation are just going, we don't care what you think.
Yeah, whatever.
We're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And do you want to read it or not? And they're doing it as part of expected design. That is really what it is. Now, obviously in the background, all of the metrics will tell you that people who caption their video get better eyes on content. 80% of video on the web is watched with the volume down. A lot of teenagers are not even clicking that speaker icon to turn the audio on, they're just watching it. So it's become not being done for disability in so many things. It's just become a part of normal, great social media design. That's been a lot of the driver. And so I don't think they're being trained on it. I think they're just seeing others do it and they're going, great, well, everyone else does it and they're successful, I'm going to do it as well.
In our conversation so far, we've been focusing on the digital space. But what about the physical? Whenever I'm visiting Tate Modern, Tate Britain, or one of the other Tate galleries around the UK, I always notice how good the artwork descriptions are. Those little white cards on the wall that you quietly sidle up to and read, so you can get context for the picture you're looking at, and suddenly it all starts to make sense. What I love is the way they get the balance just right, so if you're a real art lover, you don't feel talked down to. But if it's your first time in an art gallery and you're finding the whole thing quite intimidating, the language is welcoming and explains everything simply, rather than being all pompous and making you feel stupid. One factor in this is the easy-to-read font, which was developed as part of the Tate rebrand by Wolf Olins in time for the launch of Tate Modern in 2000. It's just so clear and legible, so you've got the high contrast between black text on a white background and really nicely rounded letters, which give you a sense that everybody is welcome and art is open to all. And this is underlined by the plain English in the descriptions of the artwork. You've got short sentences, everyday language, none of these in-jokes or cultural references that people might not get. It's so well done that you don't even notice, which after all is what good communication is all about. So let's switch from Tate Galleries to Microsoft now and go back to Hector. I wanted to ask him about alt text. This is the alternative text that we use to describe images, whether they're in documents, social media posts, or elsewhere on the web. I wondered if he had any tips on getting this just right.
Just to help people understand, if people are interacting with visual content, but they cannot see it, then it needs a description. It's as simple as that. And then people start panicking. What do I describe? Just describe whatever's functionally required to get the message over about why you put that image in that document or whatever it might be. But if it is a detailed chart with data in it, well, then you have to sit and actually make it accessible by adding that information in. Just so you know, Microsoft actually automates that for us. It puts a somewhat functional description of your image into an email. If you drop a picture into an email now, we use AI to put an image description on, if you've got that setting turned on, okay? But we've labelled over 1 billion images since that feature was turned on, but we don't know your context. We don't know why you put it in. We don't know why you put that picture in at that moment in that document, so it's always better that you change it. The design experience of that, by the way, was we used to kind of just do it automatically in the background, but then of course no one changed it. So now what we do is we do it in the background, we expose it to in a ribbon under your picture to show what our description is, and that prompts so many more people to click on that and say, no, I want to change that to what I meant. And so social media does a lot of this as well. So social media, it depends on the platform, but social media can also now start auto-generating. So Reddit uses Microsoft Cloud services to put automated all ticks on their social media platform. But all of the other platforms that don't automate it give you the option now to put in the human description, the manual description as well.
How can you teach people more about this? Because some people don't realise that digital inclusion is important. Other people realise that it is, but don't really know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when you go to look up the latest guidance and advice, you're not really sure the best place to look and which things you should prioritise. So how do you, as a tech evangelist, how do you get people to learn these skills?
So first things first, talk to your favourite peers. I don't want ever to say to people they only have to look at the Microsoft suite of products and things like this. In your job, in your discipline, look at people who are making great accessible content and talk to them. That would always be my first thing, because the tools change. Tools change all the time. And sometimes I always think there are tools that social media teams are using, and then tools that web designers are using, and then tools that creatives are using. Your toolkit in work. And I don't want to kind of ever say, we should steer people away from what you've got in front of you. I always focus people on the, do you know you can do this? And if so, where are you going? If you're taking an email, okay, you can check accessibility in email. It's next to the spell checker, review, check accessibility. And the why and the how within your email platform, within Outlook, is there. So when you see an image that needs to be accessible, we don't just tell you where the tool is to do it. We actually say to you, here's the why. We tell you why you're doing it as well. So building the learning into the product is one of our best strategies. The second one is we're making it much more discoverable. So if people are running the latest version of Outlook or the latest version of Word, what we're now doing is when you make an accessibility error, so if you say, for example, you've put poor color contrast into a document, it says, well, this is failing the color contrast checker, okay? The little person appears, you click on it, it's not Clippy.
I was going to mention Clippy. Is he back?
I can see it in your eyes. It's not Clippy, it looks nothing like Clippy. It's a subtle, professional, beautiful looking little icon next to your error, and you click it, it gives you then the colour options in line intelligently that would be similar to the one that you chose, but would make it an accessible version. So the thing that Microsoft needs to work on is making sure the facility is in there. The next thing we need to work on is the discoverability. So another really easy example, if people are on Windows 11, okay, so if you've just got a PC at home, all right, and you're running Windows 11, next to your Wi-Fi is the accessibility settings, and in the accessibility settings, next to your Wi-Fi is the same little person, the same little dude there, right? And you click on it and you can turn on live captions or turn your color contrast on, or, our job is also, I think, to make things more apparent, more discoverable, to get our usage up of these features. We know the demand is there. We need to make sure that people are finding it easier. And
I think removing any of those hurdles and obstacles, so things about, say, alt text, actually it still feels like a bit of faff to write it out. And even with the best will in the world, a lot of people feel like, I want to do this. Oh, no one will notice if I don't.
So I'll tell you how I do it.
Oh,
I dictate it.
Oh,
nobody is okay. If somebody who's blind is listening to your picture instead of reading it, then no one cares about the grammar. It's only important that it sounds like what it should sound like. Yeah. So what I do is I hit Windows key H, which is on your Windows PC. That's your dictation tool, and I just speak my description. Typing. If somebody's got to sit and type the extra information into a thing, that's a task, or a tax even. That's an extra job to do. If it's 10 seconds of just like speaking to it, I think this is what this whole thing, the whole conversation is about, is that accessibility. Once you know how that you want to do it, start thinking in a more kind of like, well, what's the accessible way to do this? And dictation is the perfect way to do alt text.
I'm going to do that. And that is so good for when you're out and about, you want to take a lovely picture, share it on social media, and you just want to keep moving. You don't want to be stood in the street writing out, even though you really want to be a good person in adult text.
So I do think, though, that what you've just said, though, of stopping for a moment and making it accessible is a really good discipline. Like, before I put this out into the world, and what I always say to people is that's your personal brand. It should not be, I've got to legally make my thing accessible. It should be, look, there'll be blind people who want to interact with my content. Definitely anyone working for an organisation on social media or public-facing information should be thinking about accessibility.
It goes back to that kind of show, not tell. So you could tell everybody, we're a very inclusive organisation, or you can show people by making your content actually accessible.
A few years ago, I ran a bit of a guerrilla campaign during one of the elections. To me, it was the first time that people seeking public office were using social media and they were using video. And there were lots of kind of prospective candidates rocking up on their high street and saying, oh, vote for me. But they weren't captioning their content. So I started this no captions, no vote hashtag that was just like, look, if you want everybody's vote, then make your content accessible, right? And I would message people. I would kind of do one a day. And there were kind of two reactions to it. There were prospective candidates or MPs who turned around and went, how dare you tell me to do this? And then there were others that were like, thank you so much for telling me. I wouldn't have known, and I will absolutely make sure I do that moving forward.
So just a little thought about the future and what's next then. Yeah. So things really do seem to be accelerating at quite a pace. Is there anything that you're seeing immediately on the next horizon?
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
Anything Microsoft is bringing in?
You're going to see auto captioning everywhere. So, if you think about Teams we've talked about, then you've got Windows captioning, and you're now going to get with these AI PCs offline translation of captioning. So these new AI driven devices are going to be able to do more of the processing on board. So I think that's the first thing people need to know, is that this is not necessarily about a cloud service. This is just like onboard AI is coming for translation and for captioning. But generative AI is the big thing coming on accessibility, I would say. I mean, it's obvious, because what Gen AI is doing is replicating human experience to so much more, right? The conversation, the speech conversation you're going to have with content is completely changing, and people are just going to have to watch out for it. It's going to come like a wave. But in the disability space, we were talking earlier about alt text. The level of description it's giving now is incredible, and it's giving the context. So I said earlier, it was this rudimentary kind of man wearing blue suit and red tie. That's not what's going to happen now. It's going to know who that person is. It's going to know the context, and you're going to be able to start having conversations with the alt text. So you're going to listen to it, and it's going to say, let me give you an example. You're looking at a map of the tube station of London in the alt text, at which point you're going to be able to say to it, which stations are wheelchair accessible? And you're going to be able to have a conversation with the image. Right?
That is transformative.
That's unbelievable. And so we're really excited about, I joined Microsoft 8 years ago at that first wave of auto speech to text, text to speech, image description, face detection. All these things were starting to pop. But Gen AI Copilot is going to be kind of bizarre to people. It's going to feel quite... Let me give you a really quick example. You're going to be in a Teams meeting now. This is already happening. Now, if you've got Copilot, you start talking to it and you say, I've been listening to Hector for the last 15 minutes. What would be a smart question to ask Hector? And it will tell you, because it's been listening, it's been transcribing everything, it knows the context. I'm already getting autistic colleagues coming to me and saying this is like an absolute game changer for them in terms of their social engagement on calls. Yeah. And that's just one example that's just landed on us. We've talked about captions, we've talked about alt text. Please remember capital letters in your hashtags as well. Please remember that. Camel casing, if you want to call it that. That's what developers call it. Yeah. But essentially, there's nothing worse than a screen reader user, as we said earlier, or somebody who's dyslexic having to make sense of that,
so this
that
is
letter soup.
You've got lots of words together, and then you're capitalising the first word.
Yeah. Have I got news for you is a great example, something like that, right? It should be a capital H, it should be a capital I, capital G, yeah? Because a screen reader won't be able to understand whether it's separate words or one word. So three things: caption your content, label your images, and put hashtags in capital letters. And if you don't know how to do it on the platform you're on, go and find out.
3 really practical tips there, and it's also easy to do nowadays. Thinking back in my career, adding captions to videos could add days onto a project, and now it just happens live. Or it would take me hours to type out a transcript, whereas now Zoom and YouTube do it all for you in seconds. And as AI gets even more advanced and producing captions becomes easier and easier, we really have no excuse. But just because it happens so quickly doesn't mean we shouldn't care about the quality, taking time to check if the captions are accurate and if they make sense. And pausing to think why it's important to make your content inclusive. Remember, there's a huge benefit to you as well. It reflects really well on you as a brand, and because captions help people watch videos for longer, you'll get more engagement on your content too. A big thank you to Hector Minto, Lead Accessibility Evangelist at Microsoft, who joined me on Communication Untangled to talk captions. And to Rob Burney from Made by DBM for his excellent editing and production. We'd love you to like and subscribe. Just head to my website to find out how and to read the show notes for this episode. That's sookio.com/podcast. SOOKIO.com/podcast.